My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow the noble Baroness Bird. We all sympathise with the suffering of the Muslim community, encapsulated in the word Islamophobia. It's our common responsibility to tackle it, but to do so, we have to be very clear about its meaning, and the definitions suggested, to me, are still woolly, vague and woolly, and I will try to make a definition more precise. If we don't do this, if we don't have a clear definition, Islamophobia, the word, risks being seen as an emotive word to get public sympathy and government resources, a concern that was raised in the APPG on British Muslims. Unfortunately, it is a fact that some communities use government funding to produce questionable statistics to show that they are more hated than others, with groups like Sikhs who do not have a culture of complaint falling off the government radar. We've seen debates on anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Now, what about other communities? Shouldn't we be thinking about all communities or only those that are in more powerful positions? My belief is the government must be even-handed. The result of this effective lobbying is seen in the half-term report of the government's hate crime strategy. This gives some 20 initiatives to support Abrahamic faiths against hate crimes, but it is totally silent on hate crimes against other communities. There is no common, we've heard statistics mentioned here, plucked out of the air or provided by Muslim groups. There is no common statistical basis for comparing hate crimes suffered by one community against those of others. Figures produced by organizations like Tel Mama are based on perception and include attacks on Sikhs and others. My appeal to the government is that they start treating all vulnerable groups in an even-handed way, using common statistical evidence with clear definitions of what we are measuring. To my mind, there are 4 distinct aspects of hate crime against Muslims that are collectively known as Islamophobia. Hate crimes arising out of common prejudice. Hate crimes arising out of assumptions about the teachings of Islam. Hate crimes arising from perceptions of Muslim behavior. And hate crimes against non-Muslims due to mistaken identity. Let's start with common prejudice, experienced by, as was put to it by the noble Baroness, by those not like us, by those not of the majority. It's easy to assume that prejudice is only found in a small number of people. Not true. We all have our prejudices. We're all hardwired to be suspicious or wary of those we see as different. It's only through education, social contact with others, that we begin to see that superficial differences like colour of skin, appearance, language, or national or geographic origin are all too easily obscuring the reality that we are all equal members of one human race. Perversely, group identity is strengthened by negative perceptions of others, even when those groups are not real. Some years back, the New Scientist magazine reported on an opinion poll in the States, asking respondents about their views on Jews, Negroes, Asians, Darnerians, and Wallerians. Although the last 2 groups were entirely fictitious, they were hated nonetheless. Even today, it's common to refer to Germans as Huns and French as frogs, to say nothing of the bureaucrats in Brussels wasting all our money. My lords, today the one-time distant foreigner with a different culture and religion, who we could safely ridicule at a distance to give us a greater sense of cohesion, is now very often our next-door neighbour. And for a harmonious society, we must work to remove the distorting fog of ignorance and prejudice and see others as they really are, equal members of our one human family. This can only be done through much greater emphasis on teaching of respect for different religions and cultures. Let me now turn to the second aspect of hate crime against Muslims: negative perceptions of Muslim teachings. My lords, what generally passes for religion is in fact a complex mix of superstitions, rituals, culture, group history, and uplifting ethical teachings. Negative attitudes to others found in general society are often seen in a more virulent form, in the recorded history embedded in some religious texts, and in claims of an exclusive access to the one God of all. Even God is suggested to have prejudices. Texts condoning the killing or ill-treatment of the innocent out of context of the time they were written lead to horrendous crimes and savagery, not only between faiths, but even within the same faith, and to increasingly familiar terrorist outrages in the name of religion. Negative perceptions of Muslims can only be removed by members of that religion doing some drastic spring cleaning, and I think we all need to do this spring cleaning. Some drastic spring cleaning explaining dated social and cultural practices in the context of today's times. The third aspect of Islamophobia is negative perceptions of Muslim behavior. Political discrimination and misunderstanding of Islam cannot justify the unacceptable behavior of some Muslims, both in the UK and abroad. Terrorist outrages and the behavior of Muslim grooming gangs inevitably lead to negative images of the Muslim community. Again, only the Muslim community can address them. The fourth and last component of the amalgam of unacceptable behavior, collectively referred to as Islamophobia, is the hate and physical violence experienced by Sikhs and others mistaken for Muslims and recorded as Islamophobia. Several Sikhs were killed in mistaken identity attacks in the United States following 9/11. The first person killed was a Sikh. Similar incidents have occurred in this country. Again, religious literacy would help us make such attacks less likely. My lords, in summary, while I sympathize with the suffering of the Muslim community from hate crimes arising out of common prejudice, there is no statistical evidence whatsoever to suggest that this is greater than or less than that suffered by other communities. My lords, to my mind, we need to do a little disaggregating. To my mind, the only components of hate crime that really justify the term Islamophobia are those arising from negative perceptions of Islam or what is seen as inappropriate behavior by members of the Muslim community. It's a task, again, for the Muslim community. It's not an easy one, and the Muslim leaders and clerics deserve our full support in this.
Yeah.